Hi everyone. Welcome to Approaching Scaffolding, an alternative to the quizmaster dynamic. Scaffolding. Scaffolding in the classroom. That's a familiar idea to many teachers. In this presentation, we'll look at scaffolding inspired by research that considers the way certain interactional dynamics seem to facilitate language development. But what do we mean by facilitate language development? What do we mean by interactional dynamics? Well, all will be revealed. But first, is this what your classroom looks like? Somewhat, maybe. But whatever it looks like, it often feels like this. Gotta keep those plates spinning. Gotta keep that lesson rolling along. Have you ever felt like that? The lesson has to move. Yeah, sure, it has to move. Movement ensures that something is happening, hopefully something worthwhile. For instance, we often want to ensure that the students are comprehending, that they are with it or with us. So how do we keep the lesson rolling? Well, one way is to play this role, the role of quizmaster. We might feel that quizzing is a way not only of monitoring the students' comprehension, but also, through careful sequences of questions, something that can actually help them construct their understanding. From this view, understanding is a construction unfolding through time, and the teacher's questions are guiding that construction. It sounds rather grand, and from this view, there is something quite reassuring and respectable about being the quizmaster, perhaps. But here's the thing. Such quizzing creates a quizmaster dynamic, where the teacher initiates a question, elicits a response from the students, and then evaluates the response. So we've got initiate, respond, evaluate, or IRE units. If the students give what the teacher wants, yep, that's right. This will be followed up with a new prompt, and the cycle begins again. If she doesn't get the right response, perhaps she'll give hints and craft another easier prompt, and the cycle begins again. This is a common interactional pattern in the classroom, and perhaps it's hard to avoid completely. I'm going to call it the quizmaster dynamic, and in this presentation I'm going to show you an alternative to this quizmaster dynamic. And I'm going to take my cue from the work of Claire Painter, who's done a lot of work in the field of language development. By the way, this beautiful image on the screen is of course the artwork of the late great Maurice Sendak. Claire Painter. Claire Painter was a student of linguist M.A.K. Halliday, and like him has taken a special interest in the way young children learn language. She has made studies of children looking at what is going on before they learn to speak even their mother tongue, employing an idea that Halliday calls proto-language. That is the language that children sort of invent in collaboration with their nearest caregivers before they start to speak words in their mother tongue. One of the great themes in Painter's work is to account for how children's language develops. And to look into this, Painter studied the interactional patterns between children and adults, their interactional dynamics, if you like. And one of the things that she found was that successful language learning depends on guidance through interaction in the context of shared experience. In a nutshell, Painter claims that often, without being too conscious of it, Those caregivers who are closely around children provide scaffolds that play a significant role in the child's literacy development. Well, before we look at some examples, I want to sort of set the scene by sharing the framework that both Painter and Halliday use to describe the basic functions of expressions that babies can use. Babies. They're so cute, aren't they? Yes. They're also very expressive. Well, according to Painter and Halliday, babies, before they acquire their mother tongue, can do basically 4 things with an expressive toolkit or proto-language. With different sounds, intonations, intensities of sounds, degrees of repetition, babies can use can communicate and use their proto-language really to get something that they want. Milk, maybe. They can use their proto-language to get others to perform some service for them. They're brilliant at it. They can even use their proto-language to maintain interaction. And they can use their proto-language to express their personal interest and curiosity. So together we can call these 4 micro-functions, and the labels that Halliday and Painter use are these, which seem to make great sense. I think you'll agree. So babies then can express in all of these ways, and when they do, we get it, we understand. And human language develops when these basic functions, these micro-functions, continue to be exercised. Of course, eventually, the proto-language gives way to the deployment of words and grammatical patterns, and this takes their way with language to a whole new level. But just to say it again, this facility with words and grammatical patterns, actually let's just call that wordings for short, wordings, is still tied up with trying to achieve some purpose or function. And those caregivers who are closely around children provide scaffolds that play a significant role in providing the appropriate wordings that realise those purposes or functions. So let's look at an example. One of these functions of language is to get others to do things for the individual, the regulatory microfunction, the second one there. And here's a great example of it taken from Painter's work. So Hal says, pulling Mum and Dad by the hands, "Want to run again?" And Dad replies, "No, we can't run anymore. Daddy's too tired and Mum is too tired." Okay, so Hal wants to run again. Here's a question for you. In this short interaction, and from a language development perspective, what do you think is being taught Hal? I mean, I would say it's learning to give reasons, right? And giving reasons is apparently a thing we do together and perhaps value, because look at this. 3 months later, Mum says, "Why don't you get the little cars out?" And Hal replies, "Mummy play cars. I can't play cars. I'm too tired." Now it is Hal who is providing reasons. He has learned both to choose this kind of response, the response of giving reasons, and a way it is linguistically realised. So how did this get learned? Well, in a nutshell, Painter attributes it to this: guidance through interaction in the context of shared experience. There was guidance going on, right? This guidance occurred in a situation where the child and the adults were interacting with each other, and it was in a shared situation, a mutually meaningful situation that everyone was participating in. And notice the parents were not playing the role of quizmaster here. Well, here's another example from Painter. Again, the parent is interacting with the child, and here providing a model of what it is to justify behaviour. So Mum says, "Do you want any tea? Do you want some biscuits and cheese?" And Hal says, "No." "No? Not hungry? You're not hungry tonight, eh?" And in a similar context, Hal takes over this kind of reasoning as his own. Mum says, "Want a bit of toast?" And Hal replies, "No thanks, I'm not hungry." Now let's look at an example of a parent using a scaffolding interaction when reading with their child. This example is adapted from David Rose's Reading to Learn materials. What we're going to see in this interaction are some of the pages of a book that they're reading together, and the mother is doing essentially 4 things. She's preparing the child to identify something in the text with a focus prompt, affirming the child when she does, and then elaborating. So preparing, identifying, affirming, and elaborating. The child brings the book, sits on her mother's lap, and turns the book so the cover is facing right side up. And the mother says, "The 3 little pigs," points to each of the pigs on the cover of the book. The child opens the book and turns several pages while her mother is talking, points to a picture of a tree. "Tea!" looks up at mother. "Yes, it's a tree." The mother points to each of the little pigs in the illustrations. "Here are the little pigs." "Bye bye, Mama." And the mother waves a hand. "We're going to build a house." The child laughs, waves at the mama pig too, and turns the page. And then they just look at these 2 pages together. Then the child turns the page. "Uh-oh, I see that wolf." And the mother points to the wolf, and as she does so, her eyes get larger as if in fright. The child turns the page and points to the wolf. "Uh-oh," and the mother says again, "Uh-oh, he huffed and puffed," blowing on the child, "and he blew that pig away. Very bad, isn't he?" She says that in a different tone, directed towards the child as though it were an aside. Okay, so we'll stop there and just examine all this a little bit more closely. In the first cycle, the mother focuses the child's attention by pointing and naming the 3 pigs, and the child follows her by pointing and naming a tea. Because she's identifying an element in the text, this can be called identify. Her mother affirms her with yes, and elaborates with a complete sentence and pronunciation. "It's a tree." The child's motivation is to get affirmed by her mother, which is why she looks up at her. In the next cycle, the mother prepares by relating the story to the child's own experience. "Bye bye, Mama," waving her hand. And the child identifies the mama pig by laughing and waving. In the last cycle, the mother prepares the child to expect a problem by saying "uh-oh" with widening eyes. The child turns the page and identifies the problem. "Uh-oh." This time the mother affirms by saying "uh-oh" and elaborates by reading the words on the page and then commenting on the wolf's character. So notice that the child is always affirmed. Affirmation is crucial because it reinforces what the child is learning. and motivates her to keep playing the learning game. This is not the quizmaster dynamic. The mother can always affirm because she continually prepares the child to give a successful response. So preparation is very, very important here. It's definitely not about quizzing. Each prepare makes it easy for the child to identify elements in the text, and each elaborate gives her some new knowledge about, well, such things as pronunciation, grammar, what to expect in the story. We're going to build a house. How to be orientated to the story. A moral message about the character. Very bad, isn't he? And so on. So notice that the mother does not ask questions of the child. She's not testing the child's knowledge. What is she doing then? Well, she's telling and showing her things about the story, basically. And that's the crucial thing about this interactional dynamic. The adult is pointing out or showing how to orientate to this kind of text. Now, what can we learn from all this to take into the classroom? I mean, no doubt there is a role for playing the quizmaster, in the interest of keeping the lesson flowing, perhaps. And the cross-examination of someone can certainly reveal whether or not they understand. But I can't help feeling that the particular dynamic that this fosters is perhaps not the one that is the most effective or even humane, actually, when it ignores the opportunity to create a dynamic based on a very different principle, namely guidance through interaction in the context of shared experience. That would be an interaction style that emphasizes things like preparation, identification, affirmation, and elaboration. But what do you think? Well, that's all for today. The course materials will help us probe this question even more deeply. Thanks for watching.